The following is a presentation of the Controltrends podcasting network.
Hi, this is Eric Stromkos. Welcome to episode 324 of Control Talk. Now, your smart buildings videocast and podcast for the week ending July 21st, 2019. That's right, folks. July is almost done. Football season's almost getting ready to start. But what would a smart buildings podcast be without your co-host and mine, the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only, Kenny Smyers, the control man from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Kenny, how you doing? Kenny? Aaron, what are you doing on camera? Brent Burrows, you're here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's our big surprise of the week. Our Kenny Smyers is off. We're going to play a little game called Where in the World is Kenny Smyers? But before we do this, let me introduce our co-hosts this week who've graciously agreed to fill in. Aaron, Gorka, and Brent Burrows. If you follow Controltrends, you know these guys have one of the coolest podcasts going called Next Generation Innovation. Boys, man, thanks for filling in for Kenny. And for our community, you might know, talk about Next Generation Innovation. Tell me a little bit about that show.
Go ahead, Aaron.
All right, I'll go first. So it's all about, next generation innovation is all about the young guns in the industry, giving them a voice as a whole, also bringing in some of the challenges that we all face in our businesses, from a business strategy, marketing, sales, etc. It's all about ultimately getting what's coming next and how we want the next generation of the industry and controls and HVAC to look.
Yeah, well, no, and listen, I just need to clarify something for our community. When Aaron's talking about young guns, he means that metaphorically. It doesn't mean that, that these are gang members that are in the HVAC industry, although there is kind of a younger HVAC mafia. But, young guns is a term that, for the Controltrends Awards, that we wanted to acknowledge, the great young people in our industry. And Aaron and Brent were both recipients of the Young Guns Award. So for you people out there who are thinking, man, we're bringing gang members in, well, we kind of are, but not the way you think. So, Brent, what about from your perspective?
Yeah, I think Aaron touched on some good things. Obviously, Aaron was off and running with the podcast, probably starting back in Aaron? What was it, like November? Kind of last time into it.
I have no idea. We've been started. I'd have to get onto the Spreaker and see when the first ones got posted there. But we took it over from Jason Hook and a couple of the other guys. I guess we call them the old young guns.
Yeah.
The industry previously.
Oh, that brings
October, December actually was when the first, episode 3 came out.
I gotcha. Yeah, so that was actually good. I think I'm on episode 3 or 4 now, so I've moved into number 2 on the all-time leaderboard.
Yeah,
you co-hosting or hosting the Young Guns. So pushed Rob Allen off the podium.
Yeah, and let me tell you something. You guys too have the distinct privilege because once you came on, Brent, we went from being a PG rating to now on Apple iTunes just explicit. You guys have started done that. But it's a great podcast. If you hadn't had a chance to check it out, it really is great. And Aaron, compliments to you. You really are sort of dialing into the industry from a younger person's perspective. And but listen, before we get on with this podcast, we're going to play a little game called Where in the World is Kenny Smyers? And you guys get to participate in this because you don't know where he is. You just know he's not here. I'm not sure I know officially where he is, although there have been reports. And for our community out there, you can play along. You can give your answer in comments. And then the winner will get a really swell prize. Okay, so guys, here are your choices, okay? As you know, Kenny Smyers is a relatively new grandfather. So choice number 1, where in the world Kenny Smyers is. Kenny Smyers is visiting his granddaughter in Southern California. Choice number 2, Kenny is a big-time family man. He is on his wedding anniversary trip with his wife. Number 3, Kenny is at a men's retreat in some space out in the desert. They are getting in touch with their inner masculine warrior self. So he is smoking peyote and beating. I don't know if he's doing the peyote, but they're beating drums and some sort of male bonding experience with him and about 75 other guys. Number 3, Kenny is doing cybersecurity in Washington, D.C. for an agency, a 3-letter agency, which we're not allowed to name. But as you know, Kenny is quite the expert on cybersecurity, especially when it comes to building automation control systems. Number 3, Kenny has developed a new product that's going to be released into our industry very soon. He is prepping to be a guest on Shark Tank to try to get funding for that particular product that he's coming out with. And number 4, Kenny is on a scuba diving trip and learning to scuba dive actually off the reefs of Australia. And on this particular trip, it's not just scuba diving, it's scuba diving with the great white sharks. Kenny apparently has learned how to shoot a harpoon gun, is prepared, ready to go. Okay, so we'll start with you, Aaron. Choice number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where in the world is Kenny Smyers? What is your guess?
I'm envisioning the Moby Dick thing, not on the men's retreat either, but him with a harpoon going after the great white shark. He's got to be scuba diving, I think.
Okay, so that's your choice. Good choice. So Aaron goes on with the scuba diving. And again, if you're part of our audience, just right there, if you're watching the video on YouTube, just watch out and just type in if you agree with Aaron or not. If you are going to Controltrends, you can just enter it in comments there. Really swell prizes. Take care. Brent Burrows, pressure's on you, buddy. What do you think?
I'm not exactly sure where Kenny is, but I can't get over this image in my mind of him out in the desert smoking peyote and just whatever he would be getting into out there with kind of the wildlife and all the little critters. So
I'm not even sure. Do you smoke peyote or do you eat it? I'm not sure. But I remember that book, the teachings of Don Juan. You guys might be too young for that, but it was when Kenny and I were growing up, man, it was like, hint, it was like a classic. I mean, the series of Don Juan, and they would go to the desert, they do peyote, and they get in touch with all their inner demons and spirits and all that kind of stuff. So you're thinking he's in the desert.
I like to picture him there. So I'll be interested to hear about it when he gets back.
Well, we'll be, and I'm hoping, hint, that somebody takes pictures of Kenny because, I think what happens with these guys is they put loincloths on, right? They sit in front of the fire. They really get, it's like a caveman type thing, right? And they beat drums and they howl and they scream. And there are probably some, Native American Indians involved and stuff like that, which, if Kenny's not there, guys, we should totally go do that, right? Like a Burning Man for young guys, right?
I'm thinking that you seem to know a lot about this peyote desert thing, Eric. I think you might have some experience at it.
Are you kidding me? You got Eric's over there. He's so charismatic. I picture Eric. He could be like a cult leader. Yeah, his slogan.
I'm working on that.
Controltrends now or something like that. I don't know.
I think his slogan would be: "You have more fun as a participant, but you make more money as a leader."
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And speaking of that, guys, and for our audience out there, this is going to be kind of a fun episode because when you get together with these two characters, you never know where the conversation is going to go, and the peyote's just starting to kick in for me. So I don't know, guys, where we're going to go with this. It might not be informative, but it's going to be fun and interesting. But I discovered.
I wish I knew that ahead of time. I'd have rolled one up myself for the meantime, right?
There goes that rating. All right, brother. But have you guys ever heard of a guy called Hunter S. Thompson? He wrote a book called Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of when they're riding in and there's like, what are these damn bats?
Yeah. But he is just such an interesting writer and a very prolific guy. I mean, he was probably one of the best journalists we ever had back in the 70s and all. I mean, he was really like a political watchdog almost. Hated Nixon, right? Hated Nixon more than anything. So he wrote all these scathing articles about Nixon. And there are a couple interesting things. One of them is one of Nixon's guys actually set up a meeting for Hunter S. Thompson to meet Nixon. And, the goal, the thing was he could not talk politics. So Hunter S. Thompson says, I'm game or whatever. So apparently it turns out that one thing they had in common was that they were both football fans, NFL football fans. So apparently they got together, threw a few back and spent 4 or 5 hours talking about football, right? The whole thing. Because Nixon apparently knew a lot about football. But I kind of come back to you, Brent, because Hunter S. Thompson had a saying that has really stuck with me, which is called, he said, buy the ticket, take the ride. And when I started thinking of our industry, especially from a young gun's perspective, younger person's ticket, I mean, this industry is a hell of a ride, right? So let's talk about that, using that sort of as a framework. If somebody's out there listening, thinking about coming into our industry, or if you are a regular listener and you got some young people that don't know about the industry and you might want to give them some information on this. So first of all, what's the ticket you have to buy to get in the industry? And secondly, explain the ride to them.
Well, I'd have to say the thing about how the industry has kind of been, morphing, transforming in the last decade is you went from the ticket used to be get in, whether it was in an HVAC capacity or some other type of skilled trade, and then work your way up, and then maybe you move into the computer role, and then you become the controls guy. And it was kind of more isolated to those areas, where now people are coming into the industry from all different avenues and from different viewpoints. I think the biggest thing that we've seen the transformation and where everything's heading, where what everyone's talking about has been for a few years, is the IoT. So people from the IT space coming into the building space, as opposed to coming from the mechanical into the building automation space. So it seems like there's a lot more tickets available, a different way, a lot more tickets to get to an ever evolving ride right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. And I think, too, even just the HVAC space, because Aaron, you deal with more HVAC type contractors. And I think that industry is still wide open. The one thing I hear from people over and over again is we just cannot find qualified people. And sort of where other industries, you really do have to have an extremely high skill set sort of even getting a chance to prove yourself. I think in our industry, man, if you're willing to learn and are genuinely interested, people will take you under the wing and they'll teach you, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's basically that's the ride I've been in on, and Brent's the same way, kind of as a family business. I mean, the ticket was given in hockey gear and soccer and all the different sports that, this industry's allowed us to play, I think, or allowed me to play. And the ride's all about getting under somebody's wing or several people's wings and different animals and being mentored. You've taken us, both of us, obviously, under your wing, and Kenny too, and my dad and different salespeople, different organizational leaders, about teaching each other. And even I've pulled people under my wing too. I think mentorship ultimately is a great ride in this industry, because HVAC is rough, tough, and a little bit ugly, but it gives you a thick skin, I think.
No, but I really think you're right about that. It's it almost seems like on one hand, it's like a non-glamorous industry, but if you're concerned about the environment, for example, I mean, it is the one industry you can get in, especially Brent, with your side of it, with the automation controls, and have a direct effect and actually have the documentation, to show how many trees you saved or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's that's definitely, I think it's been a newer angle. Obviously, everything that's been coming out in the last, whatever, if you want to say 2 decades, about climate change, more going green initiatives, is that's a whole different thing. Like, I know when people, probably even back in the late 90s, if you were getting into the HVAC field, unless you were coming from a far different angle from where I kind of saw it, was thinking about saving the environment. I think it was when people first looked at that, it was like, there's a demand for talent, and that gap's gotten even wider in the last 20 years. But what the building space has done versus being able to kind of be more old school, mechanical, analog, pneumatics, things such as that, is it's given you an entry point where you don't have to be a 20, 30-year journeyman mechanic and have all that tribal knowledge to be able to jump in and make an impact. You don't have to look and say, I got to get in here at 20, and at 50, that's where I'm really going to be doing it. It's, you get to eat the elephant from the other side.
That's nice. I like that. Yeah.
So it lets you jump in kind of in a different space, not necessarily ahead of other people, but to kind of go towards a different initiative.
And we'll sort of cycle back around. Yeah, Brent, I think you bring up a really good thing. And, you hear, the saying, at least, your dad and Kenny and I have heard the saying all along, you're a tree hugger or whatever. And I think, for our industry, it could be, hey, why hug a tree when you can save one, right? Because really and truly we have that direct sort of effect. And Aaron, from your perspective, talk about, from the HVAC side, just purely, sort of, like you said, rough, tough, a little bit ugly, but what's the upside? What's the ride like? What's the upside to it?
Well, it's one of the most high-paying kind of animals you can get into. I mean, like we're in the middle of a super heat wave here, probably the hottest it's almost ever I remember. Right, we're into like 40 degrees Celsius, which is like hot for us. And I'm driving home yesterday after hours, and I'm looking around at the rooftop units, like, man, like I could, if I was a tech, if I went that route instead of the business school route, I'd be out there making a ton of cash right now.
Right.
Right. Or the other side of it, my biggest regret in my career is, when I was like 16 years old, my old man told me that summer to go and do side jobs, like start putting resi units into people's houses. I wish I did that. Never mind the fact that we had a client we're working on, a very big developer in Toronto where, a guy needs a new AC. I could have been the guy to go in and install that for him,
Yeah.
for a good price and as a favor. But, I never did that route. So I would say, the cash is endless, as a whole. And then like for me, I like, rather than the energy saving side, I like the extreme comfort side. It costs way more money to be comfortable, but that balance between optimizing your energy consumption or maximizing your occupant comfort. I like the comfort side. I just think that's a wicked animal that you can do to keep people comfortable, more productive, better learning environments, etc.
Well, you say that there, Aaron, and you talk about the cost more and the energy savings. I think when you're talking about being in the building space, and Eric touched on it earlier, the occupant experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, first off, you can look at two things. How much does it cost for you to create that experience and keep them comfortable? You can look at that as cost A. And how much does it cost for your people to be uncomfortable? Because when your tenants or whoever you have in your space are uncomfortable, they're going to leave, especially if it's way out of whack.
Right.
Where they can go back to their agreement, their tenant agreement, and just break off their lease and get out of there. So then you have an empty space, and then you have that kind of that black stain, that word around town. Like, yeah, they got a great building, great location. They can't do it. I got members of my team leaving, wanting to work from home because the experience sucks.
You bring up such a good point. It's not even occupant experience or it's not energy cost versus occupant experience. It's energy savings versus what does it cost to replace a tenant, right? That's the biggest thing, and we're seeing more of it. And I think for guys like you, Brent, and Brent's one of the top integrators in Atlanta. His company Entek has been around forever, and I think what we're seeing is that the building owners are wanting both, right? They want your system to reduce the occupant, the cost of operational expenses. They want to reduce the energy expenses as much as they can, and they also want you to create a tremendous customer experience because they're going to use that to leverage leasing their building, right?
Right. And we've seen that. Was at a building recently. It's about a 35-year-old building, and back it's had people that have been there, I think they were back there in the early 90s, and then they're with another company, and then they own it again. And that was a knock, like back in the early 90s, that exact situation happened. They couldn't keep the people comfortable, and then the tenants were able to leave. And then with that company, like that was the word around town. And anybody that was competing, for tenants in that space, that was it. It's kind of like going through, if we're contractors and then we go through and, I don't know, blow up a chiller or do anything like that, or don't follow through on stuff. If I'm the competitor, that's what I'm pounding on.
Yeah.
Every time when there's like, hey, we're looking at them, it's like, oh, did you hear about that?
Well, no, and I think the thing is that this has been generational throughout history. I mean, the deal is your reputation is your most important thing. And Aaron, I'm sure your dad probably talked to you about that. Brent, I know your dad did because he's got a great reputation. And my dad talked to me about it is, look, your reputation is one of the hardest things to build and one of the easiest things to lose, right? So, that's absolutely a key piece. Did you guys happen to see, Kenny and I went up and saw that District Center building that got all the awards and had the Distech. It was a true integration. It was just amazing. Jones Lang LaSalle did it with Distech was the control system. Acuity was the lighting. There was an integrator up there, but it was incredible how they had integrated everything in such a way that, everything was done from the phone. It was one of the best examples. We've heard about theories and seen different aspects of it, but this really tended to pull it in, and it was a big awards thing, right? And what was cool about it was they invited the tenants to be part of it, right? So you're getting to hear from them what the experience is like and what that means to them. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. And I guess I'd ask both you guys, because, Kenny and I sort of have a theory that, if you're in sales in this industry, if you're not talking about the tenant experience and things like that, and reducing operational savings, if you're just talking about the control system or energy, you're going to get pounded by other people that are having these conversations that the owners want to have. Agree or disagree?
Go ahead, Aaron.
I agree 100%. Ultimately, you got to be showing and talking to your customers or potential customers about everything and anything that you can with regards to these things. Integration as a whole, and this was something I wanted to hit on. I'm dealing with some project management and whatnot on controls and also sub-metering jobs. And honestly, like, people are, like, some of the other sub-trades that we're working around, they just think it's so easy to do controls. Like, what we do is really hard. It's really cool, extremely complex. Like, we're taking, pipes that, plumbers have been installing for years and ductwork, et cetera, and we're putting sensors in them, right? Not overly expensive sensors either, right? And we're pulling that back. We're wiring it back or assume wirelessly through IPs and whatnot, bringing it all back to different brains and leveling up to the Jaces ultimately. I mean, and we're making it all work through graphics. Giving you a representation of what's actually happening in your building from graphics based on sensors and controllers. I mean, and then making it all work. It's a really hard job that I don't think everybody understands. It looks so easy, and it's so easy to blame a control contractor or an HVAC contractor of when systems aren't working. But, like, give us a little bit of respect, folks. I mean, what we do is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And Brent, you deal with this day to day because you're the guy that gets the call going, your control system's screwed up. So add on to what Aaron was saying.
First off, Eric, I've never gotten one of those calls. No, 100%. Yeah. Dealt with that. That's always that's always a fun thing. One of the things that Aaron was saying, and I think you kind of get into it with, we're talking about building automation, we're talking about HVAC, is there you kind of wind up in this jack of all trades. What is that, by the way?
It means
trades or trades?
Means a lot, a little about a lot of stuff.
No, I get the meaning, but the phrase, is it jack of all traits or trades?
I think it depends on who you're talking to. I would say trades.
It could be either.
Okay, yeah. So I'm going to get us off course for a second here because it was a question that I saw the other day, and that just made me think of it. It was one of those things, what's a common phrase that you had been using or had been around for a long time that you're really embarrassed that you didn't know, like, how it was? Like, so I had that one, but there was a phrase that I'd been using for years, and I didn't realize until I was like 25 that I'd been saying it wrong and didn't really understand it. And it was dog eat dog world. And I thought that, when you're talking about a tough competitive environment or anything like that, it's like, yeah, it's a dog eat dog world. I thought that it was doggy dog, like DOGGY. So, and I guess I'd been saying it fast enough to where people didn't hear it, but then, like, I saw it typed out and I was like, oh my God, I'm 25 years old. How is it taking me this long?
I love that. Well, I tell you one that I hear a lot that people misuse, which is our system's open.
That's true. I don't even know if that's a misconception. They're just, sometimes that's a flat out lie.
Yeah. No, I know. But yeah.
That's a dig at the proprietary branches there, I think. Yes.
Yeah. That's good. So, you got me thinking now about phrases, right? That I probably used the right. When you stop and think about it, I was thinking about one the other day, and I can't remember it right now, where all of a sudden it dawned on me where it sort of came from and why they said it, right? Like, dog eat dog. It's like, what do you see? Like some business guys looking at two dogs fighting in the street and going, yeah, it's kind of like us. It's a dog eat dog world or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you one that I heard a while ago. It was football. It was Cam Newton from the Carolina Panthers. So you know how eyesight, if you got perfect vision, you got 20/20. Right. So they always say, that's the saying. He was like, hindsight's 20/20. It's perfect. It's clear.
Right.
And in an interview or something, they were asking him about a play or something, and he was like, "Yeah, well, you know what they say, hindsight's 50-50." And I remember watching that interview, I was like, "What is this guy talking about?"
Well, and we are digressing a little bit, but
That's all right.
But the one that I saw, Hard Knocks, that show Hard Knocks, where they go to the NFL training camps.
Yes.
So I think it was 2 years ago. There was the Los Angeles Rams, and Jared Goff was a rookie, the guy that plays quarterback, a really good quarterback. But somebody talked about the sun rising in the east and setting in the west. He didn't know that. He was like, "Really? The sun rises in the east? I'd never heard that." So
I got to say, I'm excited about Hard Knocks this year. It's got John Gruden and the Raiders. I'll tell you what, man.
That'll be fun.
Huh? It's going to be some good football.
That ought to be fun for sure. But anyway, how did we get on this, Brent? I mean, this is a Young Guns podcast, right? Brent, reel us back in, man.
All right. I'm going to reel us back in. So we're going to go all the way back to talking about HVAC, building automation contractors as jack of all trades. And that's what we're going to say that phrase is.
All right.
So when you're doing HVAC, you got to know HVAC, refrigeration theory. You got to know electrical. You got to know some plumbing and things such as that. And then when you're doing building automation, then you gotta know a little bit of programming. You gotta know some block programming, HVAC theory, operation, how stuff's supposed to work, IT, and then now it just kind of continues to be this thing. Like I think it's difficult, and you can really pigeonhole yourself if you're just like, I'm just a programmer, and unless you're doing some high level stuff,
right?
You know, if you can, bring in analytics and write custom software to say Ford Motor Company, whatever, $1 billion. Yeah, you don't need to know anything about electrical.
Right.
But kind of going back to what Aaron was saying it's you've got to be well rounded. I think if you want to, you either got to be well rounded, know a little bit about a lot of things, or you just got to be an absolute expert, all-star at one area, and it's got to be the area that it's going, not the area that it's been.
But I think to your point, even with that in our industry, I mean, you could be the best computer programmer in the world, but if you don't understand how a chiller works or how water flows, you're just going to screw something up. So, and I think that's a big part of what you're saying is you really have to understand multiple things to be a superstar in this industry, which keeps it interesting at the same time keeps it kind of challenging. But and this is why I don't think sometimes a computer programmer can just walk in and adapt to the industry.
Yeah, well, and I think what you have to do there is just like any, if you are going to be a superstar at one thing, then you've got to be in an organization that can have you in that role,
right?
And have other team members that are going to help you thrive. Like like for myself, like if I were to get involved in some massive project, like I'll be honest, I'll hear sometimes people are like, "Oh, we have this $6 billion project going on." It's like, well, don't call me to do the whole thing.
Yeah.
But there's going to need to be people that just great expertise, whether it's IT or writing custom stuff for APIs, but build a super team.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the person that's going to run the team is not going to be that specialist. I mean, if they just want to understand one process, they're going to be working for somebody who understands the overall thing, more of a generalist and understands it. So, what do you think, Aaron?
From a team perspective, like that's something I'm pushing it every day, not just with the ant colony contractors, but in our core business. And you have to work as a team. Like I look at it like professional sports, you know what I mean? And there's a difference between the feeder leagues and like the NFL, totally different animal. And it's treated differently, that the teams are organized differently. You're held accountable differently. And as individuals, players or real professionals hold themselves accountable to what their expertise is, or at least to play well as a team. The leader's job is to encourage, really pull it out of people. And then when you see people struggling, divvy them up where they need to go to keep them successful. And then no matter what, you encourage people never to turn a blind eye, keep the blinders off, to look around, provide a whole solution, not well, hey, it's on my graphics, it looks fine to me. I'm packing up and I'm out of here. Like that's not good teamwork, not within your organization, because that call is coming back to you no matter what.
Let me ask you guys a question, because both you guys are technically millennials, right? And I know that, a lot of older people have struggled with, how do we motivate millennials? What makes millennials work? And Aaron, when I hear you say that, I'm going, man, that is just such a mature attitude, right? But is that part of your generation that we sort of work together as a team versus individuals? Because when Kenny and I came along, man, it was just like, somebody's going to be king of the hill and he's going to kick everybody else's ass, and that was it. We want to be the king of the jacks, not a jack of all trades. We want to be the king of the jacks, right? And I think it was sort of that mentality. So teamwork was a concept that sort of we had to sort of learn. But is it sort of innate with your generation?
I would say from my experiences to date, like even through high school, through university as well, like we all helped each other, right? Like one of my best friends who helped me get through some of the math courses at finance and some of the accounting stuff. I hated that stuff. But he was really good at it, the calculus and stuff. So he helped me through it. I helped him through some of the marketing stuff that he wasn't interested in. And even through high school, like we weren't, and I guess this can come down to culture as well. Like we go to different schools, and it's a very competitive environment. People are not helping each other. I would say, at least as my exposure, teamwork is much easier than trying to do things alone, I think. And I see the difference between my dad and I and our styles of management as well.
It's interesting you say that. So the thing with teamwork, and kind of going back to Eric, what you were alluding to when you were coming up back in, that was probably like the early 2000s when you were going through adolescence, somewhere around there.
Like the 1930s, right? Yeah.
I was about to say Eric's actually extremely young. He's only in his mid 30s, but he constantly has the face app. That's
right. Exactly.
but
he's still, for the record, he still behaves younger than everybody else, right? So the youth is in him. He's going to outlive us all. So thumbs up to Stromquist.
Got way more energy than me. I can't keep up with him. But going back before really the internet and more the sharing of information is when you were in that competitive market, like what you knew was your competitive advantage.
Yes.
It wasn't out there. So it was like, yep, and especially if some of it, like you came up in a family business, Eric, and
right.
you had like the innate knowledge and were able to draw so much experience, I'm sure, from your father's experience, that maybe if you had a competitor coming up, it was like, I'm not sharing any of this information with you or giving you any tips. This is mine.
You're right. And that was your edge, right? That was your edge. People came to you and bought for you because you knew that stuff other people didn't do. And then, it was a rude awakening when the internet came around. And I sort of had this realization early on, which is kind of why I started Controltrends, is like, hey, they're going to find it. You might as well be the source they go to get it. It's not like you're going to hide anything anymore. So you have to come up with other ways to differentiate, but it's not, it's not going to be, knowledge that you hoard. If you hoard knowledge right now, man, people are going to, you talk about getting a black stain by your name, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I think the biggest thing when you're talking about teamwork, when you're talking about teamwork, and I've seen it happen, inside of our organization at times, I think it happens anywhere. When you have an organization that has different departments, is kind of keeping them on track towards what's the overall mission of the company as a whole, and how does everybody work together? Because I know I've had instances before with people from other departments where we've kind of clashed over something, maybe something I was doing, they were doing, and we weren't seeing eye to eye. And if you kind of stay right in front of your face right here and can't step back and look at the situation as the whole, you start looking at people inside your own organization or your own school, the stuff Aaron was talking to, and like you start looking at yourself as kind of combatants or enemies. Like it's mechanics versus the office, mechanics versus sales, or versus management, whatever. But I think I read something. What was it? It was written by Jocko Willink.
The Navy SEAL guy.
Yeah. So, and he went into an organization and they kind of had that internal struggle and everything. He was like, the biggest thing that you have to get out there is remember the enemy's not in this building. The enemy's out there. And if you do have someone in that organization that is kind of, trying to play the big time politics game to get ahead, or, maybe stab somebody else in the back to get themselves there. If you are the leader of that, I feel like that has to be corrected, or that person's got to be cut out, because that that's becomes the standard. That was another great thing I heard, in terms of leadership or what you're going to have on your team is it's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. That is your standard. I don't, it's kind of like talking about the job that we do or, your own personal standard. Like I'm always going to do the best job and everything like that. I'm never going to, let you guys down. And then you're out there cutting corners or doing stuff like that. It's like, yeah. Anyways.
So Aaron, what was your experience like when you were in the Navy SEALs, and what did you learn from that experience?
Oh, I didn't do any Navy SEALs, man. I mean, I could, compare some of the way I was raised to some military stuff. It's not formally necessarily, but I mean, I did play some high level sports, which would be kind of the same way. And I grew up with a lot of guys that landed in the NHL, whatnot. But I always found that honesty is a good policy amongst teammates, but you got to be transparent with each other about each other's strengths and weaknesses. And you got to be held accountable the same way. Yeah. Transparency, the reason you can't hoard knowledge in today's economy or today's industry is when you get like 5 different techs, say, or 100 different techs, it doesn't matter what trade they are, employees. If you're not sharing knowledge amongst each other, you're going to make the same mistake 50 times. Yeah. Right. That costs so much money, right? And frustration. I mean, one of the things we don't always account for in our say our books is the time, frustration, like the low morale and the distraction time, that we spend either not being as efficient as we can, wasting 10 minutes at a time, just communicating poorly, or by hoarding information and then making the same mistakes over and over again. And we started a change initiative in our organization probably like 10 years ago now, and it's still kind of progressing, of sharing information. Yeah. Right. Well, like if you make a mistake here, how can it be found, and how to train each other, et cetera.
Well, but let's talk about this, because, your software, the Ant Colony, I mean, that really facilitates all that sharing, doesn't it? I mean, so because there's one thing that you're willing to share knowledge, it's another way to be able to efficiently share knowledge, right? Because, Brent might discover something, but if he can't find Chad, his, other mechanic, or put it in a way he can get captured. But how does your system work to help with that?
Oh, beyond the basics of having the information in a common place, like this is really what I've been spending my time on since more or less January, to be honest, is finding ways to better utilize our software with more information, more accurate information, so that we can eliminate what I started with silly or stupid questions to, been professionalized to unnecessary questions. Right? Like nice. If you call into dispatch and somebody answers the phone and you're asking about a service contract. Like, what is in the service contract? It's like that dispatcher who's got 100 other things to do has to stop what they're doing, search into the the software or into the server files to find that information. It's like, just check it yourself, for example, right? And there's 10 minutes saved. 10 minutes times, say, $130 an hour in opportunity costs. You add that up in a year across 50 employees, tons of resources. Right?
Yeah. Hey, Aaron, you mentioned something really interesting right there. If you guys are paying anyone $130 an hour, like I would love to come up and apply. Like
you'd be a dispatcher, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say relocation anywhere.
Well, the opportunity, like our charge out rates say $130 an hour. So no, I would, even our dispatchers up there, no, I would consider their time worth, for the simplest way to put it, $130 an hour, because if they're not doing what they can be doing, then ultimately either we're not getting paid for things, which is, I mean, if you don't get paid, your business you go out of business real fast.
Now the government will just give you money. Isn't that how it works up there?
No, not all the time. The other thing we're doing, which is a little bit new and kind of R&D, is we're putting together, like in our software, there's something called Template Manager. Basically, we're going to duplicate that, make it a little bit more mobile friendly because it's for text, and then start saving YouTube video or allowing YouTube videos, PowerPoints, support manuals, anything training related, into easily searchable functions that anybody in your team can find.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you're building up a training manual, and we talked about this, but ultimately the moment you find it on your phone, you YouTube it or whatever, like that's the time to save that information, not have to go back and find it later. It's impossible. Right. So we're looking at building up a strategy to put it all together so that we can save time ultimately.
Well, and I think that's the key piece there. And Brent, you actually use Aaron's product. So how's that helped you guys with just exactly what he's talking about? I mean, be able to capture the information immediately, be able to share it, people have access to it. Is it worked out pretty good, or is we just like Aaron because of his great personality, not his great product?
Nah, I got you. I like Aaron just fine, but if we're going to pay people money and use their products, they have to work.
Yeah.
I like Aaron. I like you. I don't like you that much.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's done a good job for us. We use primarily the project side. So being able to put the mechanisms in place and then have the information about the projects, the status, because that's the thing. When you're doing controls, unless it's real cut and dry and kind of short, these things span out a long time, and there's just so much that goes into it, and it's kind of hidden in the building. Like if you went on top of a retail store right now, like you just got on top there, you can probably tell me every piece of equipment that's there and how many there are standing at one spot on the roof. And it's fine. Like it's encompassed there. Yeah. So it's actually, it's pretty easy. But if I put you in a 10-story office building and then it's like, all right, I need to know about all the terminal units, the PIUs, the VAVs and everything. And maybe you don't have a good set of prints. Like that's where having that common database is great, and being able to update that's been the biggest thing for us. I know it would be easy for us, like back before we were using the software, you would have guys that were going through doing commissioning, everything like that, whether it's terminal units, air handlers, and they're making notes in their little workbook or their composite notebook, and then 6 months later, it's like, hey, they said this equipment's not working. What do you have? He's like, no, it's working. I checked it off. It's like, well, where is it? And it's like, well, it's written in pen in my terrible handwriting back in that notebook that I lost.
Yeah, that my dog just ate. Yeah. So
yeah, but that's one of the cool things that they have there is we're basically able to build the project, go back through. We'll go back through and attach like commissioning sheets, project like the drawings. We're even looking at maybe putting some of our stuff in there, like our closeout manuals. And any place that you have errors on there, it's nice, whether it's a sensor, it's a box, it's anything, you can add a note to it. Like the commissioning tech can add a note. I can, as the project manager, I can just go look at that project and just look in the notes section, and it's just going to pop up right there. Yeah. It doesn't matter if it was 6 months ago or 2 years ago, it'll be there.
I think you've got to be doing that. And you got to be doing that because I think the level of expectation for customer service and customer support is so high that, like, again, I don't know about you guys, but if I call somebody and they can't find something, it's like, no problem. There are 9,000 other people I can deal with and buy this product from, right? So now I was curious, Kenny and I met this guy at Gorka and Brent Burrows. This goes back probably 8 or 9 years ago, a guy named Dave Lorenzini. And Dave was the guy that invented the Google glasses, right? And I am so surprised that hadn't caught on more, because it seems like there were actually industries that were using it, Aaron and Brent, where they had their best tech sit back at headquarters, right? They'd be out there with the glasses, and the guy would go, okay, look over here, okay, adjust this here, adjust that. And that was one use of it, right? So it just allowed troubleshooting. But I'm thinking, Aaron, with your guys' stuff, I mean, imagine, like Brent said, the guy's walking the roof. He walks the roof with the Google Glass. I guess you can do it with a smartphone or whatever and upload it, or a camera. But to be able to actually look at it, record it, and then have it. And there was this company.
Yeah, I can.
You can do that?
Oh, it's only been about maybe a handful of meetings or sales presentations I've done where I haven't brought up glasses. Because ultimately, like I looked at it years ago, the technology is still a little bit expensive, and the development time for it's kind of heavy, and there's not many people who know how to do it yet. But like ultimately, you're an HVAC tech and you have glasses on. I mean, the biggest problem is, techs make money with their hands. But if you have a phone in your hand, you're not making money, you're not fixing it, and it's not what you want to be doing either.
Good point.
So things like hazard assessment, or, I mean, maybe it's just me, but every tech that I've ever been on a roof with is talking to themselves as they're doing their inspections. So if you could, via voice control, build your service report as you go through it, it's done.
Yeah.
Or commissioning, for example, right? You do the point-to-point proof, you command the point, you see the damper stroke, record, right? And you have all that information there. There was a company in Seattle, they would have worked with MI Controls, McDonald Miller. They were working with a company building an app, like basically a service tracker software before the glasses. Rumor had it, the technology wasn't there yet, I guess was ultimately it. And they went back to their phones.
Well, what happened, and so I found a couple of companies that made them and they were expensive, but so two things. I will cycle back to why I don't think it's going to ever hit our industry, but there was a company in Tennessee, Lee Company, and they were using the glasses, and primarily because they had older employees who couldn't get up on the roof, they're knowledge guys, so they'd send everybody else out with the glasses, right? And the main guy could sit back, and that way they could keep their people on, their experienced people, which solves the problem of not having enough experienced people, trying to find that. But the other thing they discovered on the residential side, there was a part of the process where typically a tech could go out, something be broken. They'd write up a quote because the husband wasn't at home. They write up a quote, and then, they would have to close, there'd be another call to actually close the sale. So what they were able to do with the Google Glasses was the guy was able to shoot a video of the problem and go, okay, here's what's going on. Here's what we need to fix it. Here's how much it would cost. Right. And then they could shoot that video to the husband at work and he could okay it right there. So it upped their close rate like tremendously because there wasn't that additional step where the husbands go, we'll get somebody else to look at it. It's too expensive. And then on top of that, their value add was, and when it was fixed, he'd shoot another video. And so when they submitted the invoice, here was the before, here was the after. So I think that it makes so much sense to do it that way. And of course, with the glasses too, you could see the YouTube video or the spec sheet. If the guy's not talking to you, you could bring that up, and so you could be seeing a dashboard on how to fix something. Now, I think what happened was the reason they lost, Google gave up on them, was my cousin who lives in, is a hipster, lives in Los Angeles, man. Something about Google Glasses. Oh, man, that's creepy. Anybody sees anybody around Google Glasses, they just go away, right? So from a consumer standpoint, if you're wearing Google Glasses, you're not cool. Or any sort of smart glasses, like, because you might be videoing people. So I don't think you're ever going to get the consumer to do that. So consequently, what happens, and we talked to a couple of different companies that made them. Yeah, they can do all. They're just expensive. They're super expensive because you have the consumer, base that's driving the cost down. But it's such a good idea.
I always thought, Eric, that like if I was going to do it, I would call up CG&A and I would make, Vixo was the company I looked at, and I would sell it through distribution, honestly, because then you guys through CG&A, you guys buy it in bulk, you can drive the price down on them, and then just like a cell phone, I mean, cell phones now are tools for technicians. Those glasses would be tools for your technicians, and then you guys push it through. We slide our software in on it. And, everybody makes a piece of the pie and we drive the price down a bit. That was my strategy. It was a few years ago I was looking at it, but that was it.
I hope that cycles back around because that would be, can you imagine if you're selling a service contract, Brent, you say, okay, well, part of our service contracts includes, we're going to give you these glasses. So if there's ever a problem, you just put the glasses on and we might even have to come out, right? You just walk up and we can see what's happening. And, I think people, I would do a service, we're doing this deal with Dave Lorenzini. We go, dude, if you'll give us 2 pairs of Google Glasses, we'll wear them on every show from now on. But,
that would definitely, that would be a big maker. We've seen other instances of it. I want to say for auto mechanics, I felt like I saw something that they did that they did the exact thing that you were talking about. Is really like had the guy with all the knowledge, everything about the piece of equipment, and then had somebody that they could pay $10 an hour. Literally, when they said, "What do you do for a living?" I turn a wrench. I show up to this thing, and this guy talks into my ear, and I do what and I move on to the next one.
But I really think, because again, everybody I talk to, their biggest problem is they cannot get enough qualified people to work. And so you think about it, even if the glasses were super expensive, you take something like that, you take something like Aaron's software, And now you've solved that problem for all extensive purposes, right? Because now you can send somebody out that doesn't necessarily have the skills, as long as they can wear glasses and follow instructions. And, you think like Brent, you are a guy like Chad or your dad. Can you imagine you could take 15 people and have your dad sitting there, drinking beer and, watching the screen going, okay, yeah, go do this. But then to your point, I think the other thing that goes, if you can capture it with the video format like Aaron's talking about, now you create this database. Because the other thing that happens is so one guy, does a problem, and now instead of you having to talk the next guy through it, you go, okay, yeah, I talked the guy through the exact same problem, sending you the YouTube video, now it'll be in your glasses, right?
Right. Yeah.
The other thing too is like, you get into augmented reality and you can start putting your hands in front of it. So, a young apprentice or as particularly in HVAC, as the guys get older, they just can't climb up the ladders anymore, right? You could have pre-recorded preventive maintenance, like beginner level, expert level, intermediate level, where the hands are moving and the tech follows, the junior tech follows the hands about where they got to go.
That's a great idea.
Same thing. Like, he hits the main point where the blocking point where he doesn't know what else to do. Tease in his service manager, or, really, these could be guys in retirement for that matter.
Yeah.
Right? They pull them out of retirement, right? And get them there, showing them what to touch. And what I wanted to do with our software was, the way I figure the starting point is, and maybe I shouldn't be talking about this because the whole world's going to hear about it now, but that's fine. Voice control. Ultimately, it all starts with voice control.
Yeah.
If you can control your phone with your voice, service report, hazard assessment, inspection, boiler inspection, commissioning, etc., then the software knows what to do.
Very cool. And so you guys incorporate some of that in future generations of what you guys are doing with your software, Aaron?
I'm going to have to, for something like that, it's a big mission. I'm going to have to pull a government grant out of my butt and hire probably 3 guys and a couple specialty dudes to make it happen. But or get some investment money from the industry. Or
if Kenny Smyers is actually getting ready to do Shark Tank, if he's got a track record with Shark Tank with an idea, you could just have Kenny pitch it for you and raise money, right?
Well, these are all options, absolutely, right? If this is a real need in the industry, and I think the Google, like the tools, the glasses, I mean, it's going to go there anyway. I think it will. I thought it might be a lot closer by now. I was thinking about this a few years ago, but we'll get there.
That's interesting to think about. Kind of the thing that you said, Aaron, it really made me start thinking about it. I was like, what if you did have what if you had a service company, or even, but let's say you've got a bunch of guys that maybe don't have 30 years service experience, but you've got a bunch of guys that they can install sheet metal, they can hang ductwork, they do everything. They're young, they're tough, and then you just get some guy that is retired with 35 years experience and just subcontract him out for his knowledge and be like, yeah, go tell all my young, strong guys just exactly what to do. He gets up in the morning, puts on the glasses, and that's it.
Dude, I think we've solved our industry's labor shortage problem here. So, but I did want to.
Well, we would probably just put a lot of people out of work, including ourselves.
I don't think so, because I was going to get back to and I was going to ask you guys about this. Being sort of younger and growing up with technology, because Kenny and I have a lot of conversations, and we read a lot about with artificial intelligence and all that stuff that there's going to be a serious shortage of jobs, right? I mean, you start thinking about the truck drivers with the self-driving trucks and the self-driving cars and all that stuff. And I think all that's coming, but I think sort of cycling back around to one of the things about our industry, which makes it so great, is I don't think you're ever going to be artificially intelligenced out of our industry. And part of that is because you sort of have to be a jack of all trades to understand how the stuff works together. And you're not necessarily going to get a robot or something that's going to do that. Now, you might get tools that help you troubleshoot quicker, right?
Right.
Using analytics and stuff like that. But I think that's another plus to our industry. I don't think you're ever going to be, replaced by a machine. Agree or disagree?
Never is a big word. a long time.
Not when you're 63. There's a finite amount of time I have left for that to be true or not true for me. You guys, it's a little bit longer for you.
Exactly. I'm not sure. I've seen some videos in between, like robots at MIT in 2008 and then the robots in 2018 that they basically got like putting together a house by itself. And I'm like, oh my God, that's scary.
Yeah, but still, somebody's got to figure out. Well, maybe you're right. Okay, but what about you, Aaron? What do you think? I mean, because that's part of your value proposition, right? Is you buy my software and you won't have to hire as many people.
Right, to buy the software and do more with the same people. That's really what it's about ultimately, right? Because
I think we got a new candidate for prime minister of Canada here, right? That was a very political answer, Evan.
Yeah. But it's true, right? I mean, everybody, if everybody listening here visualizes, their team, I bet you that everybody's got some dead weight there.
Yeah.
Right. That would be great if they went and worked for your competitor.
Yeah, that's what my employees tell me is he's the dead weight. Can you go work for somebody else, please? But,
please.
That's true. That's true.
I would say that probably the people we need to ask in our industry are probably the Sky Foundry guys.
Yeah.
Maybe the Fin guys. I would say that the data they're collecting and the tag, like what they're doing, is probably the animal or the technology that will grow into, once they get some more smarts in there too, even smarter and smarter, they could automate a lot of programming for sure. Because ultimately, if you have, say, an air handling unit and the variables, with VFDs, with supply, ERVs, et cetera, like the system, it's got a point mix, it's got a program, it's got graphics. So boom,
what's the figure out? Well, you take that one step further. You guys might not have caught this show. It's about 3 or 4 years ago. We had a PhD mathematician guy, Dr. Igor Mezic, and his deal was he had a self-learning algorithm. So because even with Sky Foundry or whatever, you have to understand the rules or write the rules or whatever. And his deal was, hey, look, you don't have to know. Just hook sensors up to it. The algorithm will figure out the correlations and the relationships, and then it'll do the predictive maintenance. You don't have to write the rules anymore. So maybe our friends John Petsy aren't even immune to being replaced by a machine. But
what happened to him? Where's he at?
Where's he at? I think he's in Russia right now. He's working on political campaigns across the planet.
I was about to say if the product is there.
I want to sort of seriously cycle back around for a minute because you guys are technically millennials. And I guess now we got the many millennials that are in the business. So 2-part question. First being for our people out there, is there a difference between the millennials, your guys' age, and the many millennials? And how do you motivate both groups? And what motivates you guys, and what do you think motivates the many millennials? So if you're a manager or somebody's working with the younger folks, what's your advice to them?
I think just as the advice would be with anyone really. I don't think that there's that much of a difference in between the age groups of what I would say between what Aaron and I are. Like, I'm almost 30. I'll be 30 in like 4 months, and then somebody that's 10 years younger than me. We just hired someone on there. I think he's only 21 years old, but he's highly motivated and he's interested in the work. So it all kind of takes care of itself there. I don't think you can take somebody that isn't interested in this industry or in any interest and then force them into it and like make them love it. So I feel like it's like trying to force your kid into sports,
right?
Hate sports. Like, I don't think there's necessarily unique to an age set, but it's just psychology. If people don't like something, they're not. I don't care if you have Tony Robbins there. Tony Robbins is not going to motivate them to do that task.
All right. What about you, Aaron? What do you see? Because I mean, you've done some really good pieces on leadership and stuff like that.
So I've been traveling a lot less and hanging around in our core business in the office a lot more. And over the last, say, 2 years, it's changed. Like, I went from being the kid of the office, from 12 or 3 years old forward to I'm not actually even close to the youngest anymore. And there's a little difference, I think, aside from being raised a little bit old school, the Navy SEALs thing, to maybe somebody else. But I find our younger crew like to it's a little bit lighter. It's a little bit goofier is not really the right word, but sillier maybe around the office. If you look at the Cochrane supply team, like, that's a great example of what it's like as with a young squad. A little silly, a little unfocused sometimes. You're walking a tightrope of culture, and I've talked to Scott about that too. Sometimes it's going the other way. People are talking too much versus not working enough. But we've done. We're doing like a beach volleyball team. Like there's 6 of us playing beach volleyball now. So we do more lunches. People are going out for lunch together. It seems the difference is people are wanting to be more social at work, and even outside of work too. And that could be our culture. Like, my dad he always kept business and personal life very, very separate, like very, very separate. And I always respected that, to be honest with you. And I think it's for good reasons. Yeah, you mature in life and, drink less beer and whatnot, but, I say that the big difference between, say, me and some of the younger crew is they like to be more social around the office.
Yeah. Well, my take on it is it seems like, and I'm doing a generalization here, that, being part of something bigger than just yourself is really important to younger folks, right? Meaning, being part of a team, being part of something that's bigger. Where when we came up and Brent, your dad came up, and probably yours too, Aaron, it was more about, I work for this company, but the sort of teamwork wasn't as much. And then the other thing that so I think that's important, setting an environment up where it can be social, right? The social is an important part of it, which is kind of smart if you think about it, because we spend so much time at work. So if you have some sort of and then, I'd always been taught, especially with millennials, and this has been my experience, is that if you've got a mission that they can buy into, they will walk through walls for you. But if you just, if you're just going to be, it's just about making money, it's just a job, they're not probably going to stay around very long. It's got to be something more than just a job. It's got to be something more than just money.
Well, I think that's something that's good right there. Like, you've got to tap into. There are sometimes I'll ask myself, it doesn't matter if I'm working out or I'm kind of hit a wall with a problem that I have, and you'll ask yourself anytime you're in a tough situation that question of, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Like, if you can provide an answer for that, I think to anyone, I really, give them that why or the overall mission. And once again, that kind of goes back to something we were talking about earlier, is the sharing of information. Like, if you're going to hire someone and then basically do something Aaron talked about earlier, put the blinders on the horse and then just say, for 8 hours, you go run and you run straight. Don't worry about the rest. Don't worry about the big picture. You just run over there and I'll take care of that.
Yeah.
Like, being able to buy into an overall, like a mission, a goal, and a purpose, and believing that you are, I mean, Eric, you've probably read more psychological crazy ass books than almost anyone I've ever met. But what is every? I saw something the other day. It was on LinkedIn or somewhere it was posted. I can't remember who said it, but it said, just imagine this. It's like when you're walking around dealing with anybody, whether it's your work, your personal life, friends, whatever, that everyone is wearing an imaginary sign that says, I need to feel important. Or like, I need to feel like I'm making an impact. If I just feel like if I'm just a cog in a machine, there's no way that, and this is me personally, I won't even apply this to anyone else. Like, if I feel like I'm not making an impact or not providing any value, like there's no type of motivation when things do get difficult, hard, or things need to go the extra mile. Then when I ask that question to myself, why am I doing this? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and the three of us have something in common our community might not know, which is we're all SOBs, sons of bosses, right? So that basically means that, all three of us have stepped into organizations where there was already a culture there. And Aaron, I want you to hop in too. So how do you guys see the culture being different? And, because obviously, you've got a vested interest just beyond just working for the company, because, you're going to be taking it to the next levels, next generation. So I guess, it's great, Brent, what you said, because I think you're totally valid with that. And I think that's a commonality between, everybody. Everybody wants to feel like what they're doing is important, right? But what other aspects are you seeing? Like, for example, Aaron, with you, how was the culture before, and how are you seeing it shift since you've been involved?
Yeah, I'm going to hop back a little bit there and say that, I actually, like 2 weeks ago, not my favorite week of my life, just work was hard, right? And I found myself sitting in my office looking around at the same things I've looked at for, 5-10 years now, and literally asking myself, like, what the why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Like for real, and like feeling that way too, right? And it's like, and ultimately as an SOB, it's like, well, and the only reason that I don't run off and go, hang out in the mountains and ski and snowboard and relax, right, is honestly the responsibility of employment.
Yeah.
And the desire to give back to the people who've created, my life, especially. I've got a few really long-term employees that have, helped raise me is a big word, but certainly raised me professionally.
Right.
And ultimately that's it. It's a responsibility that was, people would kill for the opportunity that all three of us have had or dream about it. Maybe nightmare, to some degree at times for everybody. But I feel like I'd be a schmuck if I didn't, continue the employment forward and push the organization forward. From a culture perspective, I would say the most obvious is the old way was, Rick was in at 7:30 every morning, and so was everybody else. Every day, 7:30 to, what we had to do. So very, very structured. Over the last few years, he's at the gym every morning. He's in at 9:30. And then with the advent of our software too, as well, he's still doing 60-hour weeks. I mean, the man's an animal. And because he goes to the gym every morning, he's not having a heart attack, right? Which is something else, right? We got to stay fit. I asked that question the other day. But then as we kind of built our software division, and the software culture is a little different, and automation techs, at least in Toronto area, are a little different too. And ultimately it's flexed, I think, to more of like, listen, just get what you need to get done. Have some fun along the way. Never, ever, ever lose focus of what you have to accomplish. Again, that tightrope of too much social versus too much work. I mean, you got to get as much done while being social. And I would say that's probably the biggest change so far, I think.
Well said. Yeah. And I know, Brent, you probably feel the same obligation too. And Aaron, you brought up a great point, because it's like, and if you don't own a business, you may or may not resonate with this, but you feel responsible for people. You know that people's families are depending on you. And especially if you're coming into business that's done well, there's that pressure of trying to make sure you get it right. So.
Yeah, I'll be honest, like for the most part, my dad's still very heavily involved in the ownership part. I've gotten to be in on more conversations. I understand the big picture, the overall direction. But once they kind of plugged me into the automation side, like it's been my entire focus. I've always been of the mind for myself of I try to do the absolute best job I can at the job that I have. I feel like that's the biggest responsibility, and ultimately, hopefully, that leads me into the practice of being ready for anything else. So I mean, to be honest, gosh, Entek itself has been around 25 years. You've got people that have been around, for that whole 25-year mark. Actually, our COO has been with my dad since like the mid 80s. So she was back at Southern Energy. And
you know about Tracy?
Yeah, Tracy.
Yeah.
Tracy's been forever.
See, I met your dad when he first got to Atlanta. He's been a great customer, a great friend ever since. And I just got to tell you, you talk about one of the smartest guys that just understands business, but understands people. Your dad, I mean, he screwed Tony Robbins. Your dad should be teaching people how to do that stuff. But listen, we're gonna have to hop off here for a minute. But tell our community, Brent, what Entek does, how to get hold of you, and the areas you cover and the kind of the things you do, because you guys do a lot of cool stuff, including national accounts.
Yeah, so Entek, I think on the recording it would tell you it's a multi-divisional HVAC building controls and energy management services company. We do most of our work we'll do regionally, commercial office, retail work, industrial, HVAC, controls, card access, energy management. We do national retail accounts. I've been working on a bunch of that stuff, working with some Novar Opus. It's something else, but
getting to work with some antiques, huh?
Yeah, there have been some things I've been plugging into. I'm just like, oh my God.
That's how they did it back in the day, right? It's like it's equivalent of walking 10 miles in the snow to get to school.
That's what the internet connection feels. That's what the internet connection feels like. But yeah, that's it. We do most of our stuff is local, regional in Atlanta, but we also have that national division that'll do stuff. I mean, even Hawaii and Alaska. I haven't been privy to either of those trips. Leaning more towards the Hawaii one, but
I got you. And how do people get hold of Entek? What's the website?
Website is entek-inc.com. Have all the information there. Call in. Probably get referred to our sales manager, Dana Haggerty.
She's
awesome lady.
She is awesome. She is great. You guys have such great people for sure. So, all right, brother. And then Brent's putting some great videos out on YouTube and LinkedIn, so you got to check him out there. And of course, he is the co-host to the one and only Aaron Gorka. Aaron, tell our community. We've talked around what you guys do, but give them the elevator real quick pitch on the Ant product.
Yep. So as a whole, Aaron Group of companies is Aaron HVAC and Control, full suite control company, including electricians in Toronto. Aaron HVAC Service, same thing for refrigeration piping and HVAC service. With that, we built software called Ant Technologies to run both divisions from a service and a project perspective. We have Project Tracker and Service Tracker, as well as a tenant billing solution. It's $490 per user per year, and a one-time training / setup fee. Honestly, it's the best software that there is out there right now. For what we do a great job training it. Like I'm confident saying that now with the results I've gotten from the Ant Colony feedback and how we're always improving it. Like it's wicked. So if you're in this industry and you need a solution, like this is the most affordable, best one you got.
Yeah, and I think it's based on what we've talked about and just providing great customer service. If you don't have one, you're probably not going to be around long. You're going to go the way of the prostitutes when the sex spots take over. So, all right, guys. Well, listen, man. Thank you so much for filling in for the one and only Ken Smyers. Again, our guests this week have been Brent Burrows from Entek in Atlanta and Aaron Gorka. Guys, thanks so much, man. When can we expect another podcast from you guys from the Next Generation Innovation Boys?
I think we got one. I think there's one on deck for you to edit, actually, as a matter of fact, right now.
All right. There we go.
On live TV.
Love that. Love getting that content, man. All right, boys, man. Well, listen, thanks so much. There you go. That's another week on Control Talk. Now your smart buildings video cast and podcast. You guys we got to do Kenny's outro. Okay. Remember, get all right. So let me see if I can get this down. Okay. So that's another week on Control Talk. Now your smart buildings video cast and podcast for the week ending July 21st, 2019. A special thanks to our hosts, the co-hosts this week, Brent Burrows and Aaron Gorka. So thank you for tuning in. And remember, be bold, stay in control, and be relevant.
You hit me at that's weird, Eric. Like you gave I was expecting your hands to go up.
No, you guys do it first, then I do it. Okay, we're all right. Here we go.
Okay.